my god, this is gonna destroy the country and like everything is ruined.
It's getting a little country feeling, but I've heard it a lot.
Me, you don't believe in it. Hello everyone, welcome back to Pagoda 1. I'm Travis from Australia.
I'm Alex from England.
And I'm Swanee from America.
And today, as per the request of a comment, we are actually going to be talking about a topic, and that topic is LGBTQ plus rights representations in our own country, and then maybe a little bit of context to career and stuff like that. We do want to preface that we don't script this stuff first, so this is all off the cuff. Two, this is a really big topic, so we're not going to get through everything in one single video. Three, why would we be talking about this? I think that one reason that we can be talking about this is it's obviously a very current topic, so relevant topics always have relevant language, and so it's really important to know about this stuff. Two, if you actually get into that kind of conversation and stuff like that, there's actually a lot of vocabulary that you can go into and a lot of vernacular.
And a lot of it can be contentious. There is a lot of debate within the English community about that kind of stuff as well.
More colloquial side of things, there's a lot of slang as well that is introduced by the queer community, and specifically as well the black queer community. So I just wanted to preface that before we get into it. So first of all, we're going to be talking about our own countries. Who would like to start about their own countries and a point of view on the LGBTQ plus?
I'll go first. You guys probably know, I'm from the UK. I was born and raised in London. And I would say overall, London is quite a gay positive city. Or I should say LGBT positive city. There are areas that you go to that are famous for it. Most people in general don't have an issue with it. But of course, there are some problems. There are some issues. Like sometimes you will read a story about maybe a couple being attacked on public transport. People get yelled at in the street, that kind of thing. But in general, I would say culturally, it is unacceptable to be anti-LGBT in that way. It has become a taboo. But despite me saying this, I would say that historically, that was definitely not always the case. Many centuries ago, I think Henry VIII wrote anti-gay legislation. It wasn't specifically against gay people, but it was against gay acts. So if you did things that were considered gay, then you could be punished by death. That kind of thing. Yeah.
He wasn't exactly an upstanding person.
No, he's rotating on a spit in hell as we speak. Even more recently than that, you had the trial of Oscar Wilde. Oscar Wilde was an Irish playwright who was well respected within the community, but then when it came out that he had gay relationships with men, he was put on trial and sentenced to, I think it was 2 years of hard labor. That was 100 years ago. Even more recently than that, the guy who figured out the Enigma machine during World War II, Alan Turing, often credited with revolutionizing the computer. I think he was sterilized by the British government. And this was literally 7 decades ago, which is, it's a long time ago, but it's really not. People are still alive from that time. So a lot of screwed up history in my country, but I'm glad to say that it is much better now. I would say it's in general a gay positive place, and it seems to be moving in the right direction, but there are still problems and there are still a lot of bigoted people in my country, sadly.
Are there protections for minorities such as the LGBTQ plus?
I believe there are, but I don't know exactly what they are. But for example, in my country, there are laws against hate speech. So if a violent attack is found to be motivated by some kind of bigotry, be it racism or homophobia or something like that, then your punishment can be more severe.
Right, I think America also has that as well, I believe. I don't know exactly how that turns out in court, but I do believe if something is found to be hate crime motivated or something, then it's much more severe, or treated much more severely, I guess. Yeah.
What about in Australia?
Australia's a weird place in terms of these kind of topics. The Australia that I understand and I was raised with and grew up seeing around me was very open, very progressive. So I have a gay uncle. I remember my dad telling me stories that he has a cousin who is transgender, and she has been for openly transgender for 30 years. So but I just remember growing up with these stories. Obviously that sense of diversity can go to other things like race and stuff like that. But unfortunately, I think that there is certainly an underbelly to Australia that is really bad. We have a history that is, equally as terrible to Britain and America in terms of treatment of minorities and stuff like that. So there's a lot of negativity there, and I think a lot of it still exists. I heard like stories about my uncle in like the 70s, the 80s maybe, getting beaten, like physically assaulted and stuff like that, and having his jacket and his shoes stolen. And it wasn't because he was like explicitly doing anything gay in public, it was because he looked gay. It was a like purely superficial judgment. So like there was a lot of that for sure. I think in recent years it's obviously become so much better. Only in like the last 5 years did we in Australia do a referendum. Pretty much the majority of the population was like, yes, we want equality and same-sex marriage, and why isn't it a thing already? It was passed, and I remember at the time everyone was like, oh my god, this is gonna destroy the country and like everything is ruined. Within like a few months after it had passed, I think this is like 2017 maybe, by start of 2018, everyone had completely forgotten about it. Life had continued as normal because the normal acceptable thing had come to pass.
Right. Yeah, I don't even know if gay marriage is legal now in the UK. I know that we do, or rather did have something called civil partnerships, which affords the same like legal rights, but you're not actually like married the same way that a straight couple is. So what about in like either Florida or the States in general?
Okay, well, Florida. Okay, let's see. Florida is so big that like the culture and like acceptance of people varies very widely from like South Florida to Central to North. That's why I usually always like make a distinction that I'm from South Florida.
Miami's like very gay, right?
Oh yes, yes. You can consider Miami very accepting compared to other places. Of course, like still there's no such thing as like 100% wonderful, like everybody's living peacefully, of course. Taking that into account without having to mention it like again and again. Most people in Miami are very accepting, very also like minority wise is also very accepting, but typically like the more north you go, it's getting a little bit less accepting in all ways, LGBTQ plus and race wise and all that kind of stuff. It's getting a little country feeling, but I don't want to get into like political thing, but anyways, like when you look at Florida, like the most recent election, like when you look at Florida, Florida's red, like all of Florida is red, but when you zoom in, coincidentally, I don't know why, but every major university is blue.
Well, yeah,
like all those areas and whatever.
Yeah, but that reminds me of like, you know, New Orleans is in Louisiana, right?
Right.
And New Orleans is famous for Mardi Gras, right? Which is very popular with LGBT people, right? But Louisiana in general that's a different thing. So I think it's like an urban country.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So it really like varies a lot. Same as you guys, like, you know, of course the history is very ugly, but since then has gotten much better. Like we can't deny the progress, but like same as like Travis, I grew up like with very like accepting of like all these kinds of things, LGBTQ plus, minorities, different cultures, everything. So in my house, like family wise, always felt like it's totally fine. My parents always made it very, very known that they're like totally accepting of pretty much all different kinds of people. But then like in high school and stuff, you could see a lot of like homophobic behavior, and then like as a child I didn't realize it, but as I got older I could see that there's a lot of homophobic undertones in a lot of characters on TVs and movies. You know, even like Friends, Chandler's father is
a drag queen, right?
Oh, right?
No, transgender, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, no.
I'm pretty sure she changed.
Oh, okay. So yeah, so and then in that show it's like a running joke to like make fun of you know,
it's pretty,
his father.
Pretty
right, and like
times.
You know, people didn't really care that much. People thought it was funny. Like yes, Friends has been over for like years now, but it still is like considered like one of the very like iconic like American sitcoms that people use to like study English and stuff like that. So the media is still not so great, but they're kind of trying. If you see like on Netflix and stuff, they're trying to like diversify and be inclusive. Sometimes it doesn't come off very well.
Not natural.
Yeah, and it seems a little bit like showy, but they're trying.
Yeah, if you go back and watch like stand-up comedy routines from like the 90s, a lot of that stuff is pretty bad by today's standards, and you never realized it at the time. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people did, but they just didn't have the voice to complain against this stuff.
I feel like younger generations are more accepting, right? We are seeing this trend of them being much more accepting, being much more inclusive, like with like gendering people and like those kind of things. But it's weird though, I still do see like on social media and stuff a lot of like intentional misgendering, like using the wrong pronouns for people on purpose because they just feel like, I don't know, they want to still disrespect. And
so we should probably explain this to people who don't understand. So in English, when you refer to people with pronouns, you either refer to them with masculine or feminine pronouns. But the rise of transgender discourse has challenged these ideas. So these days it is considered politically correct to refer to let's say a trans woman as she or her, which was probably not the case like 10 years ago or before that. Sometimes it was, but very often like what we would refer to as misgendering was very common. Whereas these days, like people will say, these are my pronouns, someone else will say, those are my pronouns, and there are even cases of people making new pronouns for themselves. And this has caused a lot of confusion for people. It's also caused more acceptance, more awareness, and it has caused outright hostility with some people who just flat out refuse to use your preferred pronouns.
Right.
I think it also should be clarified from some English teachers that you can use singular they them pronouns.
This is my pet peeve. Oh my god, this is my pet peeve.
So yes, it can be used as a plural, but it has always existed in English.
Always.
At least in modern English.
Yes, as a singular unknown gender pronoun.
If the gender is unclear, you can say they.
Which is what we've
do
always
it all the
done.
time.
Yes.
We do it all the time.
Some water. This is an example. Someone has left this here. Someone has left their water. I wonder where they went.
Yes.
Singular is acceptable. So if you ever hear anyone saying anything different, they are wrong or they are intentionally being ignorant.
Yes.
Right.
This is not French. Water is not female or male or whatever.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
I will say, like, I don't really follow what the stories are in this country, but I do remember a few years ago, I was living with a gay person and their boyfriend came over to the house. And they said, hey Alex, what's up? And I was like, how are you, man? It's like, well, today was a big day. And I was like, why? What happened? It's like, well, I came out to my parents today. And I was like, whoa, okay, so how did they take it? And he went, not good. They're trying to talk me out of it. And when I heard that, I was shocked. I was like, talk you out of it? Like, what do you mean? But yeah, like, there's still a lot of, the conservative, old-fashioned attitudes to this kind of thing.
Yes, especially here in Korea, like moving to that side of the topic. Definitely a lot of young people, like I speak with students and like sometimes they ask me about this topic. They'll be like, oh, like, yeah, I'm cool with it. Like, I'm fine with it. But then like I have had some older students and actually not so old students, even some like late 20s, 30-year-olds who are like, oh, I don't agree with that, or I don't believe in it.
I've heard it a lot.
What do you mean you don't believe in it? If they exist.
Yeah, they're not like unicorns.
It's not Santa Claus.
Well, you just ruined Santa Claus.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
For some people, I think.
God.
Some children.
Wait till you hear about the Tooth Fairy. There's a lot more contention here and a lot more of a generational gap, I feel, in Korea in terms of like the ideology regarding this. I think Korea is slowly changing. Obviously, it's still really, really common for people to be kicked out of their families, disowned, to potentially lose their jobs. Maybe becoming less common as like just individual workplaces become more accepting of that thing.
It's slow, but it's happening.
But that's what you get when you do have a country that is majority conservative Christian. They have enormous sway in this country. Obviously, as I said at the start, this is a big topic to get into.
Yeah.
One thing I want to mention and like get out there to get people thinking is I think people need to change the way that they think about the LGBT+. But the queer community as a whole, I think one of the big issues, and this is something that I think that like religious groups latch onto, is the sexualization of that group. that they're all perverts or deviants or like they're just hypersexualized. And the thing is, they're just normal people. You know, they don't do anything more or less than anyone else.
Well, this brings us back to like what I said about King Henry VIII, because his law was not about like being a gay man or a gay woman. His law was specifically about gay acts. It's the action that is the bad thing, which is why a lot of people are fixated on that stuff.
Yes.
Okay.
So big topic. We've done our best to sort of address it. We obviously come from progressive countries. Things are you're still getting better and better, and things are getting better here. It's just taking a little bit of time. But obviously, the best thing that we can do is talk about it, because there are places in the world where it's still not okay and it's still very dangerous to be queer.
Yeah, that's a big point.
Yes, and guys, let us know in the comments about what attitudes are like in your country. Are things getting better? What do you think? And don't forget to like and
comment
and
subscribe
and hit that bell as well. Thank you very much, everybody. We have been Pagoda 1. Bye-bye.
Bye.